Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto with my Brainiac colleagues right now, including my Brainiac friend, Sean Hannity, who is one of the nicest people in this business. But I'm catching the kind of drift he had with Ted Cruz early today on his hugely popular radio show, and it got nasty. And I'm thinking to myself, either Hannity is in a bad mood, or he hasn't had dinner. But Sean, it's good to have you and with Maria and Trish and David Advent. So we're all going to play in this. But what happened? What happened?
You know, it took me a little by surprise. Everyone's talking about the delegates. The big story out of states like Georgia over the weekend and South Carolina and Colorado and other places are, okay, what is the Cruz campaign doing in terms of courting delegates that are otherwise committed to Donald Trump in the first round of balloting? And I was just asking him about it, and he kind of went back at me, which he's done now a couple of times, and said, oh, that's a Trump question. And I said, no, it's not a Trump question. It's a question that I think voters really need to understand, because most people have never been through this process before. They don't follow it, Neil, as closely as you and everybody on the set does. And I was a little surprised that he really didn't want to answer it. We really didn't get to the answer that I would have liked to have heard.
But just to expand it to my colleagues here, what the issue was, how he gets these delegates in states like Colorado and Wyoming, particularly in Colorado, where there isn't a statewide primary or caucus. He gets the uncommitted slate that becomes his slate, ditto in Wyoming, and we've seen this in a number of other states. In fact, he's picked up 40 or so delegates in the interim here that might cushion the blow if he loses badly in New York. So he knows that's out there, that people wonder what's going on. He's following the rules, but what was his response to that?
Yeah, no, listen, I was not implying, and I'm not implying now that anyone's breaking the rules, but most people don't understand it. One of the things I've been advocating, look, it's the Republicans are not as corrupt as the Democrats with this whole superdelegate issue, where literally, if you strip away the superdelegates on the Democratic side, you've got Hillary and Bernie Sanders neck and neck.
You're right. It's a close race.
On the Republican side, it would be a much closer race. So that's a pretty corrupt system. But on the Republican side, I think, because it's a national party, I think there ought to be limited choices given by the national party to the states. For example, if they want to be a primary state or a caucus state, I think that's fine. I don't like a convention because not every person participates. For example, like in Colorado, I think all the people in Colorado would have liked to have had the opportunity to go out and vote, and it's really only 65,000 people participating when it can be over 1 million. So if they want to be proportional or winner takes all, I think also every delegate should be bound at least on the first ballot, because in a state like Pennsylvania, which is coming up in a week, you know, if you win the state, you get 17 delegates. But then the rest of the delegates are unbound. And on the vote, when you go to vote, you're actually voting for delegates and you don't even know who they're associated with. So it gets pretty crazy.
John, you know, even people who are generally favorable, not necessarily endorsing Trump, but generally favorable to him, like Rush Limbaugh, are thinking that he's just protesting this a little too much now. They say, look, if you don't like the way Colorado picked their delegates, you had 6 months to study the rules. You could have gone in there and forced some kind of change in the rules, or 100%. Perhaps better adapted to the rules. What about that? Are his complaints turning into a whining now?
You know, 100% that's accurate. I mean, I think Ted Cruz did outwork every other candidate in Colorado. He showed up. Everybody knew what the rules were ahead of time. I don't think that's not my issue. My issue is, I think going forward, the system could be more inclusive, which is what I would like to see. But you're absolutely right. I think what's troubling to a lot of people is the fact that, wait a minute, why didn't people participate?
Right.
The headline on Drudge is, you know, nobody's voting in these states, but then the delegates are being distributed and they seem to be going to one candidate, probably because Ted Cruz has worked harder. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Yeah.
Sean, it's Maria here. What do you think is going on now then behind the scenes, knowing that we've got Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania next Tuesday night, and then beyond you've got California June 7th, and then of course Indiana, which Cruz is really working already, and that's in May. What do you think is going on behind the scenes in terms of these candidates luring the delegates, making sure to lock those people up ahead of these key contests next week and beyond?
You know, that was one of the questions, Maria. It's a great question, because what do they get to offer delegates? For example, I understand that they can pay for their airfare, They can pay for their hotel. They can pay for dinners. So is that going to come into play? You know, I think the reason why I like the voters participating, because then the delegates go and will represent their vote at least on the first ballot if they're bound. But in terms of courting the delegates, I think it's a legitimate question that we really do need answers to. What are the candidates? If they are offering anything, are they paying for airline tickets? Are they paying for hotel rooms? Are they buying dinners? But I think the bigger question that I'm really concerned about is, if you look at the comments of Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and Mitt Romney and even John Kasich's campaign and Karl Rove, our colleague, they're all talking about a white knight candidate coming in at the last minute if they have a third or fourth ballot. And that's pretty troubling to me.
Isn't that suicidal, though? Think about it, Sean. This is Trish here. I mean, for any candidate to come out and try and take the nomination effectively away from the two guys who are getting the most votes. I mean, I don't know how you win a national election because you'd be so hated by some of these Cruz and Trump supporters.
And answer that in 10 seconds?
You know, yeah, I can. The quick answer is, look, if somebody wins more states, has millions of more votes and hundreds of more delegates, and they don't get the nomination, you have created resentment, chaos, and a busted party.